GraphQL, which is also going to be very transformative in the way that it can be used in the technology side of the business. So, hope you're looking forward to that. So our next session is a fireside chat with Silicon Valley icons Subra Iyar and Som Das. I'm sure many of you have heard of WebEx, and we like to look at Subra Iyar, compare him to our East Bay native icon, David Duffield. Like David started PeopleSoft and made it very, very, one of the best enterprise platform companies, and then sold it to Oracle. Subrah's had a similar journey. He started WebEx, he took it to IPO, and sold it to Cisco, and now he's on his next venture to start the next disruption in omnichannel collaboration through his startup Moxtra, and he's going to talk a bit about it today. Welcome, Subrah. And Subrah is also an alumnus of my alma mater, IIT Bombay. So always great to have somebody from the IIT Bombay out here. So welcome. We also have Som Das. Som is a veteran serial entrepreneur and a venture capitalist. He's been in the technology business for over 30 years. He's currently the president and co-founder of Business Accelerators, Inc. And it's an incubator focused on building and scaling businesses around cutting-edge digital technologies. So his interests are in cloud computing, software-defined video, AI, machine learning, cognitive operations, security, and e-commerce. Prior to the Business Accelerator, he was founder and CEO of E4E, a business consulting company. He was also a general partner at Walden International, which was a venture capital firm, and he was one of the early investors in WebEx. So there you go. Som has been a charter member of TIE Silicon Valley, and he's been involved in many joint ventures and joint cross-border deals with the US Trade Mission and India and China. So welcome, Som, and over to you.
You've got the board, I've got the brain. Let's make lots of money.
Can you hear me? Okay. So thank you. It's a real pleasure to conduct this fireside chat with Subrah. I've known Subrah now for more than 20 years. And I got to know about WebEx when I was attending a conference in Atlanta. And one of the existing investors of WebEx told me, when you get back to the Bay Area, you've got to meet Subrah and Min Zhu, who was the other founder. And he just bugged me for 7 days. Until ultimately I said, yes, when I get back to the Bay Area, I will meet up with Subrah and Min. And that was the best decision I ever made, because after 20 years, I'm like most of you, still a regular user of WebEx, of Cisco WebEx. And it has been a great pleasure for me to know Subrah for 20 years as a fantastic entrepreneur. And I will tell you a little bit about how he built his company. It's a lesson for those who want to build companies in fintech and in other areas. But before I get to that, I'll tell that story a little later. I wanted to start with actually talking a little bit about what Subrah is doing today and how it relates to what he did 20 years ago at WebEx. So maybe, Subrah, I can start by asking you the question about what inspired you to start WebEx. I remember the story from Quarterdeck, actually from Future Labs to Quarterdeck to WebEx. And then fast forward, what inspired you to think about Moxtra?
Okay. Thank you, Som. Thank you all for giving us this opportunity to talk. So what inspired WebEx? I was a business development executive, and frequently one of the things that really struck me was I had to travel, let's say all the way to the East Coast, spend hours overnight just for a 1-hour meeting. So the concept of having, the collapsing of space was always very interesting. And this was talked about for a long time, since the 80s. So I was very intrigued in the time of the internet, particularly when Microsoft talked about net meeting, etc. But what really caused WebEx was a disappointment within many of the products, that they didn't live up to that expectation at that time. And as a result, I met Min, who was sort of an early pioneer technologist in this area, and really pushed him to sort of deliver a solution that I could use. Because most of the early solutions worked only within a campus or within a particular environment. And my use case was really about dealing with customers, partners, external entities, and none of the early solutions were built for that. So that is sort of the inspiration behind WebEx, which was to be able to, if you think about meetings before that were sort of in the same, you had to be at the same place at the same time, it was really about multiplexing the, not being at the same place, but of course at the same time. And Moxtra sort of was the next leap beyond that.
Yeah. So what lessons did you learn from WebEx that you have transferred to the Moxtra situation and experience?
Well, I think as building a startup, there were a lot of lessons learned. As I said, I could, one of the key elements was I built it for myself. So I could relate to the end customer using the product. I built it for myself. So of course there are so many lessons in the journey of an entrepreneur. In those days, the internet was new. It was a platform shift. And it opened up a whole bunch of new opportunities that we never thought of, which is sort of similar today, I feel, particularly around mobility and cloud. But many of the lessons came around of, that it takes much longer than you think it does. Min started in this journey way back in 91. It took us almost a decade before this became reality. I joined him only in 95, so to speak. So persistence is one of those things that really came. In the early days, there were a lot of problems with our solution. Early customers, I used to dread going to parties. People used to meet me and say, oh, I use WebEx and my God, my meeting crashed in the middle, et cetera, et cetera. But the interesting thing was that nobody canceled. They were all really upset, which also said that there was a huge demand for this kind of service. And being a pioneer, your customers put up with all of the early problems. And I think it's a similar situation now in fintech in these areas. You have the early mover advantage to experiment, to play, and it takes time. But then you have a huge advantage in the future because customer expectations keep rising over time.
Yeah. So Scott, in his previous presentation, talked about the omni-channel in front and how there are new ways of dealing with customers. I think it'll be interesting, Subrah, for you to comment on that aspect, because I think there's a correlation between those trends and what you're trying to do in Moxtra, especially around wealth management to begin with.
Yes.
Maybe you can shed some light on that.
Yeah, so why did we start Moxtra? Moxtra, I'm an angel investor. I invest in a lot of startups. Where some of my early engineers or architects from Cisco approached me in 2012 about the idea of mobile collaboration, which is very interesting because just like the internet switch, the huge platform shift, I saw mobile is a new platform shift. So we started in 2012 to exploring what is mobile collaboration. And that was sort of the journey that brought us to this stage. And if you really think of some of the realizations was that one of the problems with meetings was that I told you that you had to synchronize time. So while you sort of could be any place, you had to be at the same time. But one of the modes which people communicate today with the mobile device, you realize very much so, is that they're having almost like 5 meetings at the same time. They're having 5 conversations. So this concept of multiplexing time along with multiplexing space was sort of the key realizations, that messaging sort of builds the ability to virtually have 5 meetings at the same time. Then the element was about why would you want to collaborate on a mobile device? A mobile device really doesn't lend itself for collaboration because the form factor is very small. You're walking around. Collaboration by definition is a very thoughtful activity. But then you think about it more, and I was using, and I said I built it for myself. I realized you want to collaborate when you must, or when you have something urgent. And typically it has to do, of course, people use it for casual conversations, but in a more serious business context, it has to do with urgency, and it has to be things bursty. It has to do with essentially around money. You have to make some decisions, quickly. whether it is in a business context about making an investment decision, etc. And the time is of the essence, and these are short, bursty, fast conversations that you want to have. Which all lend itself to saying that, okay, people are already beginning to do that. People are using services like WhatsApp or WeChat, et cetera, to conduct business. Again, these products were not really built for that. They don't have the compliance capability, but the whole conversational capability is what we sort of wanted to bring to collaboration, which is on demand, and that is sort of the inspiration behind Moxtra.
Yeah. I remember a couple of weeks ago when I was chatting with you, you had kind of talked about the similarity with Slack and GitHub.
Yeah.
Maybe you can give that analogy. I think that'll explain a lot in terms of helping to understand the value that you bring to the banking sector.
Yes, it's a lot of the tools similar to what I said in the early, in the 1990s, so to speak. Microsoft had NetMeeting, there were a lot of these products. They all dealt with the internal collaboration problem. How do you sort of work with people inside your organization? And if you recall, I talked about how the external collaboration problem was a much harder problem, right? Now, if you take that analogy and you move to the world today, and you think of the mobile device, and you look at, again, products like Slack, et cetera, they address the internal collaboration problem of people or engineers working on a project together. But when you're sort of working with customers outside or partners outside, that lends itself to a whole different set of challenges. For example, one of the key elements we uncovered very soon was that in a mobile device, you don't, the form factor doesn't allow for multiple windows, so you don't jump from one window to another. So you want collaboration to happen within an app. So it's the in-app experience that you have to deliver, and that in-app experience sounds simple, but it's actually very complex to do, because now you have to fit in any bank app or any commercial app, for example, and deliver a seamless experience within that application. That also has implication in the back end, because then you can't deliver that unless you're also integrated in the back end in the same way. So it's sort of like if you take the analogy of email and you say email, there's Outlook in the front end and Exchange in the back end. How do you sort of have both of those tie in as a seamless part of an existing infrastructure? So these are sort of really complex problems. And second, whereas if you take Slack, it kind of connects to the project management systems around engineering, for example, like GitHub and Jira. These systems have to connect to back-end financial systems like ERP systems and or, of course, a core banking system, as in the case of in financial institutions. So all this presents huge technological challenges, but at the same time, they provide a phenomenal experience once you sort of cross those barriers and again become a barrier of entry to others.
Yeah. So now the company has traction. You've got real customers. I think there are 25 customers in production and also in pilot form.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what has been the experience with banks, small, medium, and large, because we know there are all kinds of banks of all different kinds of shapes and sizes, and what has been the experience?
Sure. First customer came out of India, believe it or not, because mobile, even though, as you very well know, was sort of taken off in Asia first. So our first customers are in China, China Postal Bank, India, Citibank, as well as in Singapore. So let me just show you a quick video so for people can see what the experience is. So can you turn on the video, please?
Citigold says hello. Citi redefines relationship management. Reach us the way you connect with your friends and family in your everyday life. Have conversations, video interactions, share images, execute real-time investment transactions, all on your smartphone, exclusively for Citigold customers. It's simple, fast, and safe. Just log in to the Citi mobile app and choose Hello. On the homepage, you can view the status of your RM and SRM. To open a chat window, tap on Chat with Us. You can send a text or an audio message. If your RM is unavailable, he can view and respond to you later. You can also exchange pictures and use the editing tools to highlight specific details. You can call your RM or SRM by tapping on the phone icon. While on call, your RM or SRM can invite other experts, such as an investment counselor or a branch manager, to join in. The audio call can be converted to a video call simply by tapping on the video icon. You can also minimize your ongoing call to access other features, such as the Transaction Corner. Transaction Corner is the source of real-time investment intelligence. Once you have discussed a specific investment opportunity, the details will be entered by the RM in the Citi system, and you will immediately receive a notification. Should you decide to proceed, you will receive an OAC to authorize the transaction. That's it. Your investment transaction is now complete. Simple and convenient, isn't it? The next time you want to reach your Citi team, just log into your Citi mobile app. Say hello to Citi.
So this is a great example of how, Citi complete in India transformed how they dealt with their high net worth customers. It was driven, of course, with all the traffic conditions, etc., all these problems that exist. And initially it started in private wealth, and now it's sort of growing to commercial lending and other situations. Particularly, there was sort of the impetus to have robo-advisors, as you know, and they realized that it's those exception conditions that you want an advisor available, a human advisor. So to be able to offer that seamless experience is what we do. And if you notice, again, at no point do you see Moxtra. You saw it was the Citi app. It had to be Citi app in the front end, and in the back end, it had to be completely compliant, built into their infrastructure that they built. So we see that, pervasive. I mean, as you mentioned, we have now 25 plus institutions around the world, using the service at various stages of deployment. The early adopters, again, were in Asia, out of Singapore, etc. But FIS has just announced their solution. They should be in the market in the US from January. So I think this completely transforms how you interact with your financial institutions through the mobile device, wherein you have a sort of a seamless conversational interface to the robo, but beyond the robo to humans as and when needed on demand.
So there was one more use case that you had also discussed with me at one time, which was around the telecom carrier. So this is an example, a very good example of front office processes dealing with customers. Talk a little bit about the telecom carrier use case that you also have been involved with.
Oh, yes. I mean, obviously, this is broader applications beyond, of course, just fintech. Mitel is an example of a telecom provider who want to provide a seamless universal communication and collaboration solution. They are trying to, of course, move all their PBXs to the cloud, and they use Moxtra as sort of the mobile collaboration layer, along with using their PBX in the cloud. So I think the concept of embedding communication collaboration as a layer into mobile apps of different types, of course, financial apps and business apps, but supply chain apps, distribution apps, etc., is sort of the beginning we see, and where, again, the ability to provide high touch, seamlessly on demand is what is sort of consistent, whether it be a telecommunication app, whether it be the financial app for a financial institution, or a enterprise app. We see that happening across the board.
And I guess the common factor here would be really secured external collaboration.
Yes, the design point is external. Internal is much easier, as I said, from a compliance perspective as well, etc. And there are a lot of standalone apps. The hard part is making it embeddable. So instead of of somebody developing a mobile application having to provide communication collaboration within, they have this build versus buy question. And if you use an external app, it's like saying you got to get out of the app that you're working in and then move to another app, which again could not be secure, may not be compliant, etc. So how do you sort of embed a secure message inbox, which used to be an email inbox? So if you think about it in the traditional sense. So if you take like a banking application like Wells Fargo or whatever today, and you click and it tells you message center, and under the message center it'll have you a phone number that you have to call in case you want to reach your RM, which is ridiculous considering you're a phone, and it has email instead of messaging. So we see the secure messaging capability as a ingrained capability in any business app of any seriousness.
Right. We have a few minutes. I think we can take a few questions, Subrah.
Sure.
So please go ahead. Any questions? Yes.
Hello.
So as an early stage startup, how did you go through due diligence? You are handling customer PII and sensitive information as you are, wires and financial. So how did you work with banks and how did you integrate your platform with their core systems? What strategies did you adopt?
Well, first the first step one was to develop an app. So, because this, except for saying that mobile and its collaboration and it has to be somewhat serious, we had no clue. So it took us about 1.5 years, 2 years to build an app which is in the App Store, and it got it is in fact even today in the Apple App Store, it's sort of one of the top-rated business apps. That sort of becomes your marketing platform for banks, et cetera, to experience it. Unlike the traditional way wherein you have to sort of go pitch a solution, you could actually tell people download my app, and it's quite a few financial institutions actually were users even before, because there are people looking for these kind of solutions, especially digital innovation, people responsible for digital innovation. So that sort of helped. Second, of course, our WebEx DNA helps because we built an infrastructure before and we have sort of that expertise. And third, that yes, we had the staying power to work with, let's say, a city, for example, IT departments, even though they were across the globe in Singapore, etc. And it took a solid, to bring city up to production. It took us for a solid 2 years. So, the first one is always the hardest. Since then, it's much easier. But this was not easy, particularly. But we had worked with Mitel, these other Verizon uses us for supply chain, et cetera, so that helped us bridge into getting into a financial institution.
Mr. Iyer, thank you so much for making time. Loved your talk. You're a really inspiring investor, entrepreneur, advisor. I think we're all so happy to have you here. And my question is very simple. May I give you a 30-second pitch after your talk?
Well, I mean, you have me on the spot, sure. I will tell you that
Thank you very much.
I will just say this, that I have been an investor, but frankly, I tried being a VC, I tried doing all that, I didn't enjoy all of that, and I said I really enjoyed being an entrepreneur. So many people ask me, why do you do it again? It's partly because of the fact that, having my own sandbox to do things is the most interesting, but I'd be happy to chat with you after, yes.
That would be great. Thank you so much.
I should have worn more comfortable shoes.
Yes.
Thanks. The question is around omni-channel requirements. So I know we focused on sort of mobile experience, but when you look at banks, even wealth management, if you will, depending on which bank and where, a lot of the customers are either still calling in to a call center, or there are a bunch of folks on the web, as well as the mobile. When you're sort of going in with a solution like Moxtra, how big of a pain point is it to sort of bring it all together? And does that capability exist within Moxtra to deliver that?
Yes. I think that's a very good question. I think that if you look at the continuum, the continuum is at the lowest end is self-service. It used to be handled by a web portal. And then you move to the next level, which I call sort of the information worker. The person with whom you don't necessarily have a relationship with is the call center employee that you get connected to on the fly, who doesn't sort of remember your name, or, in fact, quite often doesn't even see what you're seeing, etc. And beyond that, you move to the relationship management, where it's one is to one, and then to the next level, one is to a team, and at the highest level of a financial relationship, you were team to team. So let's say even if a small business or a large business working with a bank, for example, then the employees, my employees, or employees of my organization deal with the employees of the bank, and the employees may change, but the relationship stays forever. So this is sort of a continuum that's there. So yes, to answer your question, obviously, the first important point is, I think that our bet is that the starting point is a conversation, not a phone call. Okay, that's where the world is headed. And the conversation is sort of starts with texting, simple texting. But escalating that seamlessly from a robo-advisor, if necessary, to information worker, to, if necessary, to a relationship manager. But if you're a known entity, especially like in private wealth and or as a business-to-business customer, then you skip the part of particularly the information worker. You may have some robo-advisory services, but primarily we see robo-advisory, believe it or not, in helping the knowledge worker on the financial institution side, making them more productive, the intelligence augmentation of the business relationship manager versus the customer. So yes, so this is sort of the overall complexity, but to offer a seamless, continuous collaborative conversation experience is what we aim to do.
I think we are almost out of time. Maybe one more question. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you for your time.